Yes, the Monetary Policy Committee agreed to reduce the official cash rate by 50 basis points, announced it yesterday, to 4.25%. Annual consumer price inflation has declined and is now close to the midpoint of the committee's 1 to 3% target band. Inflation expectations are also close to target. If economic conditions continue to evolve as projected, the committee expects to be able to lower the OCR further early next year. Within minutes of the announcement, the Reserve Bank's announcement, the main banks were starting to pass the cuts on to some borrowers. And the man to talk all things property and policies is Ashley Church. Great to have you back on the show, Ashley.
Nice to see you too, Leah Panapa, festooned in all your finery there. It's looking good.
Festooned, what a great word. You should have seen me. You should have been here on Melbourne Cup Day because I wore a fascinator every hour of the show. Yeah.
A different fascinator?
A different fascinator. I'm very fascinating. I have many over the years because I normally go to a boozy lunch, but alas, I was working.
I'm sorry I missed it.
Yeah, and every hour I pulled out some pearlers. I mean, if the few people that can watch me enjoyed it, I think. All right, Ash. Thanks. Let's get on. So the main banks have started passing the cut to borrowers. Are they big enough cuts though?
Well, they're consistent with what the Reserve Bank did, and let's just remember there's an element of there's nothing to see here, move along, because let's remember you and I have been talking about this for several months. The banks are well positioned to pass these cuts through. The only reason they haven't done so is that they are being led by the Reserve Bank with respect to how big those cuts should be. So the banks are pretty well positioned. They're all very profitable. They could potentially probably pass bigger cuts through, but they won't because that would concern them that the Reserve Bank might reverse its trajectory. So this will continue. There'll be another announcement in February, which I would expect to be probably another 0.5% again, which will also be passed on. So, it's going to plan, I guess.
Good news for first-home buyers who may have been struggling to get approved. Am I correct in when I saw banks are dropping their test rates? Is that right?
Yeah, they are. That's interesting. So the test rate is this rate that they use, which is not the actual rate. It's a higher rate than the mortgage rate at which you would actually be paying.
Yeah.
That they put in place, and the reason they do it, and there's the interesting story about this, is the reason that they do it is that they want to make sure that if there's any increase in interest rates, that you are poised and positioned to be able to handle that increase. And prior to 2021, they were criticised harshly because their test rate was 7%. And this is at a time when mortgage interest rates were around that sort of 3.5% mark. And every commentator was saying, why on earth would you have rates that are so high? Interest rates will never go that high. Well, 2 years later, up they went. Yeah. So in some respects, and look, let's be fair, this wasn't an act of wisdom on behalf of the banks. It was purely an accident. But the fact that they'd done that meant that people were probably in a position to pay those rates that might not otherwise have been. However, they have been too high, and the definite trajectory of interest rates now is downwards, so it makes sense for them to drop it. I'm actually not sure what the new test rate's going to be, but any drop on what it's been is going to be welcomed by first-home buyers.
Well, I just saw Kiwi banks just quickly from 8% to 7.5%. I always think, what's the point?
Still too high, because all they're basically doing is saying to people that can afford a mortgage, sorry, you can't afford a mortgage, or you may not be able to afford a mortgage if this series of events took place and rates went up.
Yeah.
To be fair, not often fair to the banks, but to be fair, there is a scenario where this drop in inflation, which has taken place over the last 12 months, reverses and inflation goes back up again, and as a result of that, the Reserve Bank pushes mortgage interest rate or the OCR up again, which causes banks to push their mortgage interest rates up. So it's possible. But I would have been thinking, I would have thought that in the current environment, the banks would be doing everything they could to make it easy for people to normalise things again.
Yeah. And you did mention it, we're expecting further cuts come, what is it, February, down again?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think probably another 0.5%. It all depends on what happens over the next 2 or 3 months. What is it, 3 months from now? And a lot can happen in 3 months. The world economy could go either way. There could be, we're going to have Trump coming in on the 20th of January.
Yeah.
What that's going to do, and as a result of that, it could be a bigger cut. or things could have changed to the extent that the Reserve Bank decides just to hold its current position. But I would be banking at this stage, no pun intended, on the expectation of about 0.5%.
Nice. Just want to move on to something else. I saw that auctioneers are reporting, Ash, much busier auction rooms with an expectation it will remain the case right up to Christmas. Is this another sign of positivity in the market?
Yeah, it is, although you could equally argue it's a sign of panic on behalf of people that perhaps have been holding on for a long time and are now finding it more now finding the holding on to properties to be more difficult, given that they've had to endure these high rates for a long time. I'm going to err on the side of saying it is positivity, and that it's people who perhaps held on to properties over the last 12 or 18 months because they didn't want to take a lower price than their expectations had been. And that now they think that the market has recovered to a sufficient level where maybe they can put it up to auction. It's the choice of auctions which surprises me, because, and you and I've talked about this before, auctions aren't necessarily a particularly fantastic tool in a soft market for selling a property. They're a brilliant tool when the market's hot. Best way to get the best price. But in a market where it's soft, you could. So it'll be interesting to see what that means. It'll be interesting to see whether it continues over Christmas and into the new year. And it will be interesting once we get a handle on that to see whether it is an indication of what's going on in the market, or it's other factors are leading it.
I remember going to auctions in the mid 2014, 2015, when the market was just ridiculously hot. And it was just a beast. The room was a beast. I'd never seen anything like it. And in each auction I went to, I had my limit, right? And I will start the bidding at, and I put my hand up. I felt so powerful. I put my hand up on the second one, and then my limit was blown out in about a minute, and it just went up and up and up. And I must have lost so many houses, and it was really dejecting, Ash. I just remember driving home and having to ring my husband because I think he was overseas working at the time, and I went, "No, lost that cute little house we wanted," I learned to hate them.
Just as an aside, it's interesting. I used to tell this story. I haven't told it for the last 2 or 3 years for obvious reasons, but it's an analogy, but it applied to a lot of young people. They'd get a approval from their bank, and they'd go to their auction, a bit like you, and they'd bid, and they'd miss out, and often they'd miss out by quite a considerable margin. So then they'd go to the next auction, and they'd miss out on that one as well. By the time they got to the third one, they were starting to complain and say the system's broken, it works against people like me, so the government needs to step in and do something. But they'd keep going, and they get to the fourth or their fifth, and finally they'd actually buy a property. And on the day that they bought their property, and I bet you fell into this category, on the day that they actually finally got a property, suddenly their whole worldview completely turned on its head, because they knew capital growth was coming, and the reason they weren't able to afford a property was because house prices were going up. And they loved the system. And at that point, they were saying, don't change a thing. Keep it exactly as it is. And both positions are right. Both positions are correct. They're just a reflection of where people, the different points that people are at in the market. And I understand why people were upset, but I also recognise that once you're in the market, it's a great place to be.
Yeah, no, you are. That was exactly me. And my last auction story is we found a place we liked, and I was all excited. And again, I was doing the bidding because hubby wasn't here, and and I went above and beyond. Ash, even if I got it, I was going to have to ring the bank and beg. I knew I was in the wrong zone, but I'd lost so many times. I was determined to get it, so I went up and up and up, right? And then I realised I was out of my limit. I was only allowed X amount. I'd gone about 10, 20 over it. And so I thought, they better actually outbid me. And they did. They just came back hard. It was me and a couple. And anyway, they won. Yes.
I was just going to say that's exactly why for exactly the reasons that you just described and what happened to you, that's why auctions work. Because people go in there, not necessarily, but hopefully people who can actually afford the difference, they'll go in there, they'll say, I'm not spending a cent more than this, and they'll come out and they've spent $20,000 more than they intended to. That's why auctions work in a hot market.
And I did it because, you get competitive and you're like, I'm not going to lose it. I'm not going to lose it. And I got outbid, thank goodness, because I would have had to been on, ringing my bank manager in tears. And the first thing they said when they stood up, which I'll always remember because the auctioneer goes, going once, going twice, are you sure, Leah? I'm like, yep, I'm out. And then he hit the gavel and they shot up and they were like, woo! And then the first thing the woman said, I'm sweating blood, and she yelled out, "We beat Leah Panapa."
And she must be mega rich. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought, oh, well, I gave them the bow, well done. I doff my cap, well done. But they just didn't want to lose to me. So there you go. That was fun. So yeah, auctions. Don't take me to an auction, Ashley, because I can't control myself. I want to talk property managers. I tasted it a little bit before I came to you. The number of property managers has increased 53% in the last 10 years. Do you think it's because with the regulations that the previous government brought on and landlord responsibilities and the changes in the laws, landlords don't want to deal with it?